Hello, hello. Currently, we're just waiting for Unity to open, so I'm in a little bit of a void here. But yeah, today we're going to be popping into the second part of us making some combat stuff for VR Chat Worlds. Tuesday, we got a few things set up that were very kind of rudimentary, like get this working in the back end. We have health bars, we have things that follow the player that can receive damage, and now we need to actually build ways of applying that kind of damage to other players. Excuse me. Alright, so I have set up some basic 3D models that I just kind of did this morning while I was waiting for breakfast. I have made a small pistol. I have made some kind of automatic weapon, presumably, and some kind of single shot weapon. Just so we can have an example of things that we'll be trying to design for. Well, I got hiccups the moment the stream started. But yeah, the idea is we're going to have ways of each of these being able to run off of the same script, and we just give it like, this is how much ammo is in a clip, this is how often it fires, this is how whether or not it has auto fire, and stuff like that. But first and foremost, we're just going to have it when you click attempt to apply damage to a player. And that is where we are starting. Let's go into our scripts and let's make a weapons folder. WoW pawns. And how do we want to do this? Let's have this. We'll just call it pistol for now. We're going to branch it out. We're going to adapt things around as needed, but I haven't quite figured out the full format of how this is going to work yet. Hello, Lumi. Welcome, welcome. We're going to call this Armory Pistol, just for now. Why does YouTube recommend me random streams for real? Because we're awesome here. Yeah, so welcome. We're doing some essentially game development for VR Chat Worlds. I'm building out some tools for building combat encounters in VR Chat specifically. And we're pretty early on in it, so any interest in hanging out, feel free. Yeah. All right, so we got this pistol here. Let's go ahead and open up the script for it. Unfortunately, my ID JetBrains Rider a little slow at that, so get this open. We don't need our start method, so we can clear that out. First and foremost, we just need the on pickup to use down, which is clicking when you are holding something. So pick up, use down. That. We'll go ahead and force a requirement for a VRC pickup. I actually use JetBrains Rider I really like its autofill abilities and a lot of the tooling that comes with it. They've added some autocomplete that's like AI tooling that I'm not huge on. I largely drop it and disable those features. But I really like how it really knows like what to select next if you're pressing tab or things like that. It's very good at contextual actions. It's also free for non-commercial use. I do use it commercially though, so I do pay for it. Acquire component, type of VRC, pick up. There we go. I don't think we actually need. I don't think we need to have a reference to it on our script, but on pickup use down requires that it exists on the component. Yeah. I zoom in so that you can see the actual code itself a bit better, but I don't scale the actual UI for like the Explorer and everything like that. So that probably doesn't make it super obvious. So we are going to need a direction from which we raycast towards and a layer mask for the layers we are trying to hit. So we'll do a serialized field for a private layer mask. Layers. Serialized field of private transform, and that's just going to be our fire point, so like where we're firing from. And let's just have a float right now for the amount of damage that we are going to do. This is going to be probably dramatically overhauled in the future, but that's just how we're setting it up right now. Okay, we'll do a physics raycast. We're going to raycast from fire point position in the direction of fire point forward. I'll actually break this out like that. Out, raycast hit. Then we need to give it a max distance. Okay, yeah, I can just do that. Max distance, just 200 meters for now. Then we give it our layers, and we tell it to collide with triggers. And now we do yeah, I have been doing this for a while, and hey, welcome. I'm gonna be honest. Arcturus, how do I say that? Because I feel like I'm butchering it dramatically. my apologies. I'm using Unity for maybe 10 years or so. Nice. I've really been enjoying it. I guess I started back in 2018, so not quite 10 years, but you got it right the first time. So Arcturus. Okay. Neat. Awesome. Alright, so we are going to be looking for our armory player on this collision. Armory players are going to be selected in our layer mask, and they're the only thing that will show up in that is a trigger collider, because we need the player to still be able to walk through it and not have weirdness. I got the card game working and spawns cards correctly. Nice. But even though the cards have VRC objects and component, they aren't synced. Any idea why? Oh, less nice. So they have the VRC object sync component. You're not instantiating them at runtime. Is it possible that the way that you're enabling them is enabling different ones for different players. I'm not entirely sure. Anonymous, they're using VRChat's SDK for handling networking for it, and VRChat is very strict for networking instantiated objects. So you have to use their provided object pooling system, and it is all right. It has some issues. They do have sync variables, but you can't do like GameObject.instantiate a new thing for that has synced values on it. Anything that is networked has to be networked in this, like, has to exist in the scene by the time the person loads it. Non-instantiating, just using an object pool, and I have 3 decks of cards in the pool. Yeah, I wouldn't know where your syncing is failing during that then. Which is a good question. Alright. Back to this. Let's find out if we're actually hitting this guy. So primary player equals hit dot transform a component. Player return. Okay. I'm using instantiate for the network. Yeah. The deck is being synced, but the cards aren't. So like you can move the deck around physically. Oh, sure. Yeah, almost all of my stuff is on VRC world creation. I used to do update videos for like when VRChat would put out a new like a new beta or a new update with some stuff. I would be a lot more on top of that. My schedule as of late has not quite allowed me to be so on top of it, but I've recently got back into the streaming here, and we'll see if that leads to easier video production again. Could the VRC object pool be messing with the syncage? Having a VRC object pool on a object that has VRC object sync on it shouldn't affect it. Shouldn't. That's the best I got for you. Alright, so we're gonna check player here. So player, we are now going to try to apply a damage value to this. Oh man, I abstracted the way that synced stats are handled in a way that makes it really easy to add lots of stats, but not very easy to just apply it to the health one all the time. Does the VRC SDK allow for scriptable objects? Not really. If you are going to use scriptable objects, you have to do a lot of build process faking of some stuff. I use scriptable objects all the time, but during post-process scene, I have a bunch of tooling that turns that stuff into just arrays of generic values that get put onto a script, and then during that same build process, it pretends that script is a singleton and just automatically assigns that script to all of the instances in the scene that can have that variable. I like using them. VRChat, unfortunately, doesn't make it easy, so there's a few workarounds. So I'm just going to go ahead, and while we have the array for the stats, I think I'm just going to give it a hard-coded reference to the health stat, because it's the one that almost everything is going to be interfacing with. So let's field a private AP stat. And just call that health stat. Have a public wrapper for that. Health. What's that? Alright, so player.health. Now we're going to use this and have a event that we send to it, which means that we're going to have to wrap one of yeah, okay. So we remove our underscores because that's what VRC uses for protecting against network events, and specifically give this the network callable. Oh, is it getting loud? All right. Yeah, let's see here. I'll probably have to volume mixer it. Yeah, we'll drop it down to 60% there. I use I actually have Firefox installed almost exclusively to be my music player for live streaming. Probably there's probably smarter ways that I could handle this, but since I'm only using Firefox just for music, I don't have to worry about changing the volume settings back once I'm done with it. Sure. Alright, so network callable, we're going to give this a max of 10 per second. I think default is 5. What is default? Yeah, default is 5. Alright, we'll have this both on add value and remove value. So player health remove value. So this is going to be something that only the owner is going to receive, which means testing it here in the editor is going to be a little bit on the annoying side, but I think should be yeah, we're probably going to have to handle this, handle a lot of our testing in client, since the first thing we're implementing is basically weapons combat against other players. A lot of this, since we're doing this kind of event handling, and okay, let me lay out the current structure we have. I, as a player, have a item that declares another player has taken damage, such as a gun shooting them, for example. What that does is that tells their owner, like that user, hey, you have lost 15 health. They then observe that, they remove 15 from their current health, and that health is a synced value, which they then distribute back out to all of the players. When that happens, that is when we get that updated information. Because of that layout of how I'm handling that, that means that we can't test that in Unity because it requires a secondary setup to observe this happen and then redistribute back to everyone else. Now, the way that I could have this set up is if I just have like a gun that shoots backwards and we just tested it on ourselves. That might be a little bit weird, so we'll just do the multiple build and tests. So the difficulty with handling everything through our room manager is having a source of truth for a lot of people declaring changes in VR chat is kind of difficult. What you can do is you can have a game manager, or like a game owner is just the player who is assigned to it. And let's say they are the owner of all information. What we can do is we could tell an individual player, hey, you just got shot. Or we can tell the game manager, hey, this user just got shot, update their value. And that might actually help us with testing in the editor, because that'll mean that we can, as the first player, we are always the game owner for it, so it'd be a lot easier to test there. So that could be a pretty good option for that. Oh, what would be another way of handling that? Yeah, okay. So instead of having all of the players declarative for what their health is, it probably makes better sense to have that kind of room manager that has that kind of everything stored that way. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I like that idea. We're gonna have to adjust some stuff here. So let's go ahead and try building out that thing, actually. Yeah, that is not a bad idea. Alright, so let's go ahead. I need some sort of interim on the player, though, right? So, hold on, actually. I'm gonna open up Photoshop here because we don't have like a drawing program in Unity. Maybe I should make that, actually. That's actually not too bad of an idea. 1080p. Yeah, sure, good enough. All right. So let's just draw out the plan here. Grab my drawing tablet. If my drawing tablet's gonna work. There we go. All right. Oh, give me a layer. Okay, so I probably should have opened up Clip Studio Paint instead of this, but whatever. We don't need this to be too fancy. Okay, so player A over here, player B over here, and player C is up here. Player A declares that they have no, it's Paint Bucket. Oh, I'm so used to Clip Studio Paint now that I don't know where all the options are in Photoshop. Okay. A declares that they have damaged B. Now, C up here is actually going to be the game owner. Okay, I really need a different brush. Where's my brush window? Brush settings. There we go. There, that's the one I'm after. Game owner. There we go. So, player C up here is going to be the owner of the game's logic. They have a synced data store of what everyone's health is. When player A makes this declaration, they will tell the game owner, hey, remove 10 health from B. B in this list will have whatever their value was, which was, let's say, 100. It will be dropped down to 90 and then rebroadcast to everyone. So player B will then observe that their health has been declared at a lower value. What having this kind of separation allows, so instead of just like having full declaration of like this has happened. Having a secondary source of truth up here, since we don't have server authoritative networking for VR chat. So what we kind of have to do sometimes, especially in competitive games, is we need to have a second observer for verifying that something is real or not. Should B not communicate its health with C as well to validate it? So what you're saying is when A tells C that it is damaging B, C should first gather B's active health and then do the subtraction? I think that would make sense. Though not if B never has declaration over what their health is. Because if B can never change their health, if the only one that can change that value is the game owner itself, I don't think there would be a need to report that back. I don't think there would be a need for C to directly check to see what the current value of B is if it's not already in their data storage. Though I guess we can have it in a few different spots. It just depends on how worried we are about excess networking. Because we can have the yeah, we can have the game owner have a synced list of everyone's values, but we can also have B have a synced value of my health is 90 or something like that. And that lets us double up to have... But if we have two sources and one ends up being wrong for one reason or the other, we don't know which one is wrong for what reason. I think I figured out my sun cage issue. What is the attribute I have to put next to a variable to tell VR chat to sync it? Oh, just bracket udon synced. Bracket. That's all you need to do to have any variable synced. So I think for now, having sorry, I'm just thinking in a way of TCP standards. A tells C he wants to fire to B, so B tells C its health, and this is health to tell A its health, and so forth. Alright, let me reread that. A tells C he wants to fire to B, so B tells C its health to tell A its health, and so forth. I'm going to be honest, this kind of networking thing is actually something I'm not super familiar with. I've looked into it in the past, and by past, I mean probably 5 years ago. This is the kind of thing I would like to know more about and probably should do more research on before I have the final version for this. But for now, I think having just this top one is a good start and gives us room to adapt it out further to have more individualized setups like that. Because again, my first solution is probably not going to be the best one. Judging by how it sounds, you probably are more familiar with this kind of implementation than I am. And I probably should figure out a bit more of what is standard in this kind of situation. Pika, yeah. So what we're doing right now is trying to figure out who is declarative of what information and when. So, yeah. What we're going to start with here is over here person A on the left declares that they have damaged person B. They do this by telling person C, who is the current game owner, hey, I've damaged this player with this amount. And then C then updates their storage of all of their idea of health and player information and broadcasts that back out to all players, including player B, who now realizes, oh no, I just lost health. So at no point is ownership of objects transferring anymore, which is a big benefit. Yeah, this is PvP right now, which is going to make this a little bit more difficult. If it was PvE, then actually PvE in this specific situation probably wouldn't be much different, so long as the NPCs are also synced, or the characters that you're combating. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't call like an enemy boat an NPC, but maybe. But I think this is a good starting point for now and can be cleaned up in the future. I'm just thinking there's really no need to tell all clients what the health of the player is, for example. So, okay, the big issue with just having the game owner know what everyone's health is since, okay, let's say, okay, so the game owner is a single player that has this list. If this list is not synced and our game owner, let's say, leaves or crashes for some reason, we need a way to transfer the information that we have for everyone's health. Not the game owner, but the game owner and the person receiving damage. Transfer ownership to player. Game owner and person receiving damage. Oh. Yeah, so yeah, the big issue that I'm trying to kind of fix by having this as a synced storage is if game owner person C is just gone, they like crash or choose to leave for some reason, this information needs to be pick-upable by the person who is now the new game owner. So let's say B suddenly becomes the game owner. They need to have an idea of what everyone's health has been up until this point. Now, this might not be the best solution for this, but I think it is something that we can step forward with for now. And if we end up coming across a much better solution, or you think of something, feel free to join my Discord server and let me know. Then we can go ahead and implement a more robust and solid system like that in the future. For now, I think this is enough for us to get started. I would have all clients basically request the player's help, then send out an event to the players that there has been a change. That sounds normal. So one of the difficulties is we cannot do a I guess there's probably a way to do synced value requests for VR chat. I'm trying to think, because our networking options are a synced variable, which is synced whenever we declare, which is broadcast whenever we declare it, so presumably whenever change. And there's custom network events with variables. What if the weapon was a networked object that relayed the information? Well, that seems to, ergo it never leaves the room. I'm not entirely sure what you mean with that one. Weapons in this situation are going to be a networked item that you can pick up in VR chat, and like everyone will see you do that. It will have like some syncing on it, but when we are firing with it, it's going to send an event out. That event then needs to be received by someone, and we interpret that into some kind of data transfer. Yeah, so right now our option is to have this middleman up here that has the data storage for everything, instead of having everyone individually declarative of health, which will definitely cut down on the amount of individual syncing. The way they set this up is odd. There's definitely some complexities to it, because a lot of what it is VR chat does not want you to just melt their internet bill, but two, all the tools that we have are essentially very basic wrappers for photon actions, and that gets complicated. That's how my system works. Like, it is accumulate stored damage and to boot in between networks. Drink some water. Yeah, I think now that we have the event parameters, we can pretty safely build up that kind of not like build it up in a queue like that. I think we can pretty safely broadcast on action, so like we don't have to worry about it kind of like delaying a bunch of hits or something. But especially because this is going to be largely PvP rather than PvE, it's going to make more sense if we have things respond as quickly as possible. So yeah, I think we can start with this, and new systems, as I become aware of them, we can migrate over to that instead. So we're going to start with our let's call this game stat manager. I know I broke everything out to be these stats. It probably because I keep debating if I should just have health be not a stat, but just an actual unique value on it. I don't think so. I think we should be fine doing this. Yeah, this should be good. Maybe it should work like a database cluster. If I was you, I'd use a single string to contain the information and double pipe it. Yeah, so one of the immediate difficulties there is, since we are in VR chat, strings are the slowest thing to network and will very quickly fill up the limited network bandwidth for stuff, especially if we're trying to sync strings quickly. So things will end up like getting delayed, it'll end up clogging or stuff like that. One player acts as the game owner, primary node. All other players, like replicas, ready to take over. Yeah, so if we have this like game stat manager, for example, that just knows what the values of all the players' stats are, which for now is just health. It can be stamina, it can be mana or whatever in the future. Make me want to open up VR chat after 5Z. Yeah. So we're at the point where we have enough tools that we can build anything, but there's still enough restrictions that you really have to be creative, let's say, to figure out how to build anything. Excuse me. All right, so I think what a good idea is going to be for this will be having the AP stat register itself into the game stat manager as a listener on enable. And then this just has a synced float array, since all of our stats are just floats. And then we say, okay, so how do we want to declare which thing that we're setting a value to? Because we can do a name. It might make sense to do that. Because I think instance ID is different between players. So I don't think we can just check an object's instance ID. We can use a UID. I wonder if I should set that up in a dictionary or how I should handle that. I kind of like there are limitations, otherwise there would just be slop uploaded all the time. I mean, there is slop, but not like bullies. Sure. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, it's hard to make a bunch of easy content, but it's still hard to make good content. That kind of ends up being the difficulty for a lot of people. All right, let's start out with our udon synced. Just have it private for now. Float array stat values. Now I need a way to associate these values with things. And I'm going to do that by putting my desk into seated mode and sitting down. I remember trying to make a VRC module for VRC for elements. Did not end well. Yeah, it's probably a lot easier these days, especially with people have found ways to set up pretty complex like homebrew server integrations just off of URL handling, and I think it's terrifying and complex, especially when people just casually say, oh yeah, my world relies on an existing array of 100,000 URLs. It's like, that's a good sign. All right, we're gonna serialize this field. I have a feeling that since we are building out this stat manager, there's a good chance we might not have our pistol demo working by the end of the stream. Cinema with buffer stream. Yeah. There's some magic working in some VR chat worlds right now. All right, so AP stats. These are going to need to subscribe into the stat manager. Thank you for your videos. They helped out a ton starting on Uno strips. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I want to get back into doing a few more basic tutorials, because these streams have kind of been like dev logs of me working on different projects, and they incorporate a lot of complex tooling and stuff that I do, and at times are tutorials on their own. But there's a lot of things that I think I should be doing tutorial videos on as well, just for more basic VR chat things. I mean, just using an object pool, the closest I have to a video on it was the original release notes that I went over in a beta that it was in, rather than even the final version. So there's a lot that I can definitely keep making videos on. I'm not running out of content. It's just been difficult for quite a while to get all of it working. Alright, do a private data list. This will be stats. We'll have these. Subscribe to this on well, if we have one bank of all of the player stats, It might not make sense to have them broken out into these individual synced modules anymore. Because that's what I've had it set up. Okay, so if I just click back into Unity here, I'll show off what we have set up previously. Once the loading bar goes away. There we go. So our Armory player over here is just kind of a capsule with a UI, and they move around and do some stuff. What we have for declarative synced information is the AP stat, which is just for Armory player. The only one that we have right now is health. We could have things like stamina or the likes, but the stats health right here for AP stats health is a 0 to 100 value with a value in the min-max. This value is synced. So this game object, the stat object here, has a synced float on it that records, reports, and updates this value for the player's health. This health bar up here subscribes into this AP health, so it knows when the stat is changed during the deserialization event. So when this stat changes, it rebroadcasts this updated value to all players, and when that happens, the on deserialization event functions. We iterate through all of our listeners, we grab them, and we run a function on said listener that just passes in the float value of what that value is. Now, this is going to be a little bit different if we are having a individual synced manager for all stats, because what we're going to need is oh, this is gonna be weird, because especially if, like, you know, maybe for now it'll be best use them in tandem for sure. Yeah, that makes sense. The part that's going to be complex for me having to figure out is going to be okay, so when a player joins, they have a player object, which is a synced instantiation essentially for them, created, that is this Armory player over here. That means they have instantiated a new synced stat, which is here, which is health. This then needs to record itself into the okay, AP stats here. It's really helpful. You talk about your thoughts. Is learning how. Oh, this knowing whether I'm actually approaching problems as a programmer. Yeah. I am not a classically trained programmer. I am a self-trained programmer. I learned very much off of YouTube videos and experience in Unity and in VR chat. So there's going to be a lot of things that I excel at very well. And there are going to be other things that I am much less familiar with. And that is how all programming is going to be forever. You will never know you will never know anything. You will never know everything. And there is a lot to not know. Self-taught and real hands-on experience is the best way to learn. Yeah, it does result in there being a few different gaps in my knowledge that I think other people would have a bit less problem with, but that's going to be everything. That's going to be everyone's situation at some point. And one of the difficulties that I have is data management. Anything that does not have a literal visual representation is very difficult for me to wrap my head around. So opening up Photoshop here was like the only way I could possibly like step through where all of this data is being handed back and forth for. So the issue that I'm going to run into back in my day wouldn't have you. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. We live in the blessed times of the internet just telling us things, and we hope that they're not lying to us. All right. Back to this. Since we have health on every player, we could just know, okay, this player is this ID. However, it's not going to be that simple because these stats all have a what's it going to be? So it isn't going to be like each player has one stat. Each player has health, and in the future they might have stamina. So I'm building this out for redundancy, and it's going to be can't just make an array of AP stats. Okay, so here's the situation that I'm trying to resolve at the moment. When a player joins in, we get a new one of that, and we get a new we get a new instance of their stats and things like that. What we can do is we can data list, pretend that's our list of player stats or of AP stats. This is just VRChat's wrapper for lists, since generics are difficult. The issue that I'm having is I guess I haven't verbalized this part yet, but let's say I have my armory pistol here. This pistol needs to tell the stat manager, hey, I have damaged this AP stat. So when we are talking to the stat manager, we need to be able to broadcast which object it is that we are talking to and what value we are adjusting on it. So we need a way of having everyone know a networkable variable, which is like not a game object. It would be like a float, an int for an index, or a string for an ID. We need a good way to have that unique on every object. And if someone joins in, we have an additional player added into that. For them, however, they get all the players just kind of in order. So we can't guarantee that the index is always going to be the same. I guess what we're going to have to do is have each stat have a the game stat manager is on a player object. No, the game stat manager is not on a player object. It is a synced object in the scene that gets adjusted for something. That's what I mean, like private AP stats, all stats. I use the player account as UID for the player. All right. Yeah, let's see here. What we can do is hold on, let's go back to Photoshop because apparently it's the only place that I can think. Oop, that didn't actually reformat at all. Pixels 2048, 2048. Proceed. What is happening? Why can't I? Whatever. All right, let's hide this. New artboard. Stepping out here. I gotta go be a gamer. Good gaming. Have a good game. But of course you need to reassign the UIDs frequently. Yeah, so when a player joins, they'll have health and they'll have stam for that. When that gets adjusted on the owner, the manager side, manager, the big one over here, needs to be told which of these things they're adjusting. So the problem is we can't guarantee that the index is always going to be the same order, so we're going to need a unique identifier for it. So what we could do is we could have each stat, once instantiated, have a synced string on it that declares a UUID that the owner builds out. And then we wait for on deserialization to receive that UUID before we put it into like say the dictionary of all stats on here, which I think we should be fine doing a dictionary for that. We can then do a string-based lookup, and when player A fires at player B, what they can do is they can send out the UUID of the stat that they're affecting, and or no, we know the player that they're hitting, so, and we know the okay, we know the player that we are hitting, and we know that we are affecting health. So what we can do is we can have a okay, if we know that we're affecting it, I mean, if you attach a string of the player name to it, you can see which player owns which game. Search for this. Yeah, we can also just use the player's ID, the player index. I'm just thinking, instead of the player joining and telling the owners, why does the owner not listen and tell the players? Instead of player joining and telling the owner, why does the owner listen and tell? Why does the owner not listen and tell the players? Could I have you go into that one a bit more? I'm actually gonna see if I can figure out change my freaking canvas size. 2048, 2048. Alright. Okay. Proceed. Yeah, it still just keeps forcing it to the size. So rather than the player logging in and telling the owner their health and desired UUID, for better management, the owner assigned the UUID, etc. So the reason that I don't think we can do that is, well, I guess we technically could. Okay, so these, let's go over it, yeah. These stats are stored on the player object. So I think if I hit undo a few times, yeah. These stats, like health and stamina, are right now, they're modules that are on the player object. But that doesn't if you want to declare a new value, you have to be the owner of a synced object. If it's on a player object, that player is the only owner that can ever own that object. However, we can write to it by doing a network event that would pass in a variable, and, or I guess, yeah, we have this guy broadcast in a UUID and tell this person, okay, yeah, this is the UUID associated with this. Can you get components on an object with Udon behavior scripts? Yes, you cannot with Udon graph. You can do like get component and just Udon graph, like Udon behavior. But Udon Sharp specifically adds in some extra tagging that allows you to do get component and then get a specific Udon Sharp behavior type, such as like player manager or something like that. At the same time, it does put a lot more network load on the owner, specifically, especially if this wants to support a lot of people. Also, player joins server tells the owner it wants a new ID and the owner sends it back. But if the host is listening, only one thing to reply. So if a player joins and they're over here, this person's new, this person doesn't actually have to send out an event to call for a new UUID. The owner, which I guess I'll just label up here. Wow, I screwed that up royally. All right, the owner up here can observe that a new player has joined, and they can assign that UUID to both their health and their stamina. Actually, a player will never have more than a player will never have a different number of stats from other players. So I guess we can do their player ID and their stats type. And the stat type is like an enum, for example. It won't literally be because it's just like an integer index, so that this can be more malleable for different game modes. But if these are just like indices, then we can do like 1 is player 1 stamina, whereas like 0 is player 0 health. But I don't know how I'm going to store a bank of that, because I guess we could do no. Because we can't have synced multi-dimensional arrays. We can only have synced base arrays. So I can't do like 0, 1. Who knew that networking was hard? It is a very complicated system, that's for sure. Alright, I need some water. Alright. We are 1 hour into the stream, and we've barely gotten out of Photoshop. I think that I'm going to need to do more research on this. This is probably something that, while I appreciate everyone's help and has gotten a lot of like knowledge coming my way for some of this, I think I'm going to have to also do some like independent research on how to handle the networking. Shoot first, ask questions later. Yeah. Let's try to get the current setup up and working before we end up having the game stat manager handle all the subscriptions, a backing variable reference for all of it, and that kind of declarative stuff. If everyone just has these individual stats, then we can write into that, and we can work from there. This will let us get this started up and, well, have something that isn't Photoshop for the rest of the stream. So let's go ahead and just set up this instead, since this is what we set up during the last stream. But I'll look into it. I'll figure out more of what we can do for these kind of systems, and I will come up with a plan for building out a more logistically safe and functional system. But let's start out with just telling a player to remove their health. So we're going to do send custom event networked. This will be the owner, and this will be name of AP stats dot underscore. We need. Oh wait, no, we need name of. Oh right. AP stats. Am I an idiot? Okay, I guess I was just blind. Remove value. We're going to call that, and then we're going to pass in our first parameter value, which is just going to be damage. So damage will be 20. Now, this is going to call this send custom network event just here, which we don't actually want. We're going to want to do this on the player's health. So player.health.send custom network event. Break these out. Alright, so remove value gets run. It requests serialization and then locally runs on deserialization to handle all these callbacks as well. So let's set this up and get just our gun prop working. Actually, if we just like get rid of the player object on this, will this actually be something that we can like shoot and everything just works? Because that might help with prototyping. Okay. Yeah, so let's go over pistol. We'll just start with this. Give a box collider, and we will toss on our weapons, armored crystal. This is going to need a fire point reference, so we'll just shoot from right here. Fire point. And then we'll need a grip point, which will go, I think actually it would just be, yeah. But in order to line up with a VR, hand rotation needs to be -90 on X and -90 on Z. Let's go to our pistol, toss grip point into exact gun, orientation gun, auto detect, yes. Fire point, that's going to be a reference to this here. Layers need to hit default environment, so we can just collide with things that are in the environment and everything, so that we can't shoot through walls. And armory player, that's the layer that we're using for the actual object over here, which is going to have a, my apologies if the ambulance is really loud, but this is what's going to have the its collider set to trigger, which is why we need to have our own layer for it. All right. So let's go ahead and Actually, I'm going to set this to be kinematic. I don't want this flopping around. This is just continuous for now. We don't really care. Well, it'll be given an object sync on it. So all right, perfect. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, that armory player's owner was me, so it was just following me. All right, let's grip point 180 that. I should probably be having some kind of debug log for seeing if this works at all. Yeah. Debug log. Removing value. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, probably not the smartest thing we're working on. Okay. Armory player. If I disable this, it should not follow me. Oh, but it needs to init everything. Okay. So if we let this run. Oh, I need to enable it first, don't I? This start doesn't run if it's not enabled. Alright, go over here. There we go. Does this work? Well, it's a good sign that nothing is happening. The stat isn't changing. Well, let's make sure that this is hitting. So, you know, log on use down. You know, log hit a player. And just pass a player. And this will do that to the owner, remove value, damage. That's more water. Alright, armory player here, on, then back off. On use down. Okay, so it's not colliding with. Oh, I see what's up. The armory player base is on the item layer. It didn't get changed to the armory player layer. Okay. Alright, that probably explains most of it. This is one of the things I don't like about having to use layers. I understand that for the thing that I'm doing right now, it's my best option, but it's annoying. Okay, alright, there we go. We're properly firing at that one. Now, let's make sure that networking works. Which is going to be a little bit annoying because I'm going to build and test 2 different clients for VR chat. OBS is going to grab one of them. So we get to find out which that is, and then I move the other one to my other monitor, and then we do our simulation from there. Y'all don't see the loading bar, but we are currently in the process of making a build. Alright, so it seems to have grabbed this one here. Alright, so I have this health bar above me. They have that health bar above them. They run over here. I grab this. Okay. Yeah, so that is them receiving this information. And there we go. We are correctly damaging another player. Well, and I errored out when I left because, well, it does that. But, oh well. Well, from here, I guess we can work on customizing the gun itself to do some stuff before we end up doing the what's it called? Before we end up doing the networking refactor for handling all of the managed data for that. Yeah, that's gonna be something. Keep it up. I best get back to work myself. Nice to meet you. Yeah, it was great having you. I would be honest, that is getting the info from you on some of the networking stuff is some of the best I've heard from for a while. So I definitely appreciate you coming over and hope to see you again. Have a good day at work. All right. Let's see here. I'm gonna rename this cube to table, so I'll keep wondering what it is. All right. So this weapon here, right now, just has infinite ammo. There's a lot of ways that we could reload a gun. We can point it straight up in the air like it's an arcade game. We could press R and have it auto reload. I don't think R is a good idea. I think that's what opens the radial menu. Maybe like E or Q or F, like F for refill. Maybe you can just reload when it's out of ammo, and then it just has a reload duration. Yeah, it reloads when you try to shoot it when it's out of ammo. Or maybe when you try to shoot it up. I know that one of the games that I've played in VR chat does that. But maybe it just reloads when you point up. Okay, well, we'll do serialized field, private int, ammo count. We'll do max ammo, if I can spell at all. Oh my god. We'll do 10, so start. This field, private bool, automatic. We'll do auto fire, it's false. So as field, private float, auto fire rate, and this will just be amount of times it fire. Amount of time between bullets. So, like 0.2. Let's just do that. So, what else do we? Oh, we're gonna need a current ammo. serialized field, private float, reload duration. This will just be 1 second. Just do that. And for now, we'll do a float of reload start. Full is reloading. Okay, so this should handle almost everything that we need to do for this at the moment. So this will be the actual run damage. So avoid run damage. So okay. How are we gonna? I guess we can have an update loop for handling this. Okay, what I'm trying to do right now, just so I'm like verbally walking through, is there's a lot of different ways that this gun can fire. It can fire automatically, it can fire over time, and that can be modularly set up with these settings. If it's just a single fire, so just like a semi-automatic, it's just like whenever you click it, on pickup use down can handle everything. But if we're trying to have an automatic firing system, that needs to toggle a bool for is firing and have that go just like run during update. I found the limit of my NPC system is around 250 when the network starts to break down and packets just straight up everywhere. Well, that's certainly a lot of NPCs. So. All right, armory pistol. This is going to how do we want to handle this? Yeah, I guess we can just swap this to having an update loop. We'll just support everything here and then probably break things out into what's it called? Into like inherited classes if we need to. So we'll do a check here of if auto fire. Oh, we need an is firing. Is firing equals true. And then equally we need a on pickup use down. Or use up, I guess, sorry. And then if auto fire is firing equals false. And then this will be an else run damage. Because if it's not auto firing, we don't care. Update. Man, automatic has a lot of separate logic, so it might just make sense to have an inherited class for that. Alright, we'll ignore automatic for now, and we'll just do run damage. private void fire bullet. So this is what will handle our run damage at the end, but will also handle calculating our ammo and probably like sound effects and stuff in the future. Fire bullet. Alright, so this will do run damage, but we also need to lower our ammo count. So we'll do if current ammo is greater than 0, we'll do an else here. So if it's not greater than 0 and we're trying to fire, we will start our reload. Which means we want to do our reload check up here and put all of this inside of is not reloading. Reload start time equals time dot time since level load. And if reloading is false, if is reloading is true, and I need to sneeze. Okay, maybe I don't need to sneeze. Oh, that was sudden and uncomfortable. Alright. If time dot time since level load minus reload start time is greater than or equal to reload duration, we will do is reloading equals false and run damage. Okay, current ammo minus, then run damage. And now we fill everything with debug logs. Debug log reloading. Done reloading. Firing a bullet. All right. Yeah, with all the networking stuff we were ending up having to figure out, this is ending up being a bit of a complicated stream for me to... Sorry, my brain is still very in the zone of trying to figure out some of the networking stuff we were doing earlier. But me yapping on about networking and showing Photoshop is only going to work so well for so long. Alright, so we're going to be watching these settings right here. We love network. Oh, I hope so, because my guess is this system is going to have a lot of it. So let's clear that. Reloading, because it was at 0. Okay. Done reloading. Oh, I see the problem. Alright, when we are done reloading, current ammo equals max ammo. There we go. My object pooling works in Unity, but not in game. I think I missed a line of code. What was the line about setting the owner? So when you when you are instantiating something, when you are spawning something from an object pool, the only person that can do that is the owner. So before you do try spawn off of an object pool, you need to, right before it, do networking.setOwner, then pass in the local player, so networking.localPlayer, comma, and then the game object that your object pool is on. So if it's in that script, then just game object, or if you have a reference to the object pool, _pool.gameObject. Most challenging part of having networking finished is making sure you don't have any stacking suffering. Not me having over 100k suffering when I finished my first enemy AI, since I was smart enough to put a timer on a sync variable. You'll love to see it. All right, so now we should actually properly be firing a bullet. Well, we should probably properly be reloading our ammo count. So run up here, grab this, click, reload to 0. All right, fire. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And reload it. All right. So if I uncheck the collapse there, it'll be a bit more obvious than when I'm firing. And when I'm reloading, done firing, firing. All right. Perfect. So with that, I want to do a quick test. So this is working off of send custom network event. I don't know this for certain, but I think you can call send custom network event if the sync method on the sender, not the receiver, the sender is none. That's my hope. So we're going to check that quick by doing another dual build test. The reason for that is because I don't think the guns really need to sync any self values. Like, you don't need to know someone else's ammo, for example. Maybe there can be some kind of like customization in the future, but okay, so OBS is latched on to this one. Okay. So this, oh. Okay, so that does work. Nice. Perfect. Oh, that's my other one over there. So it's here. All right. So we can, in fact, set this to be none. I just wanted to make sure that was the case before I did that and didn't know it, so then things broke. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and make the second type of weapon, which is the automatic one. So it just keeps firing as you're holding down. I guess we can just call this armory gun. Because this script will be identical for the pistol as it is for the sniper rifle. And we'll have this inherit for armory gun auto. Pop this over here. So we're gonna have a few things here that we're gonna have to change up in order for this to be inheritable correctly. So auto fire is going to be an assumed value. Auto fire rate is going to be a part of this, along with is firing, because is firing isn't a value needed for single shot weapons. Reload start time, reload duration is reloaded. Current ammo. Nice. You have a tutorial on only letting one player pick up an object. I want to set a game master who is the only one who can touch the cards. I do not have a tutorial on that, but it is very easy to set up. So what you do is you go into start, and your ability to interact with something or like pick up something is just a variable you have. So let's have a private VRC pickup. Let's just imagine you set this in the inspector. What we can do is do pickup dot pick upable, and this is just a bool that you can just set to false. And congrats, nobody can pick this up because this is set to false. However, what we can do is we can check to see if you are the if the local player is the owner of this object, or I guess if the owner is the master, because we can do that, right? Networking dot is master dot networking dot oh my god networking dot local player. So is master is a bool that we can do there. So if we do this, networking dot okay, pickupable equals networking dot local player dot is master. So that will force only the master to be able to pick this up. However, this only runs in start. So let's say someone else becomes master. If the master is the only one that owns this object because they're the only one who picks this up, we can actually check this during so if I wanted to have a button that makes someone a game master, the master of the world and the master of the game might be different. So should I hold a reference to the game master? So I should hold a reference to the game master, right? Yeah, so what you can do there is you can have it depends on how your game is handling the game master. What you might end up doing is what I would do is I would sync an index for the current owner of your game, and that would be their player ID. So networking.local player dot ID, it's like player ID. This is an integer, and you can use that for all sorts of things. What we can do is directly compare that against let's say private int game owner. So with that, we can just do a comparison with an equals check there, and pickupable is only true if the local player ID is the ID of the game owner. We have this auto fire rate. We're going to do this as well. So we're going to need wrappers since we can't actually override these functions by default in Uno Sharp. So do a protected virtual void on use down. Yeah, no worries, of course. Pretty sure there's no scripted way to change the owner of the world. Plus, in general, you want to avoid checking the instance owner just to avoid issues. Yeah, so what they're doing is they're just picking a player, and that player is going to be the owner of the game that they're playing, like the dealer of a deck of cards, for example. So they very much have a specific, this is the player who is running the show for their setup. So we're gonna basically copy this exactly, go down on use up. So we're basically just making wrappers for these functions so that we can inherit from them in this one, because otherwise you can't actually override these. And that's just a core quick launch chart. I learned today for a simple hit for an enemy to detect, I should use origin tracking rather than head, since the full body user in a big avatar lays back causes issues for melee attack range. Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. One option you could have is having a capsule collider that puts its bottom at the player's root and puts its top at the player's head, and just keep updating that so that you kind of have this generalized shape of how big the player is in whatever pose they're on. But that all depends on how specific you want to get with all that. So that's just going to be a pick and choose how everything ends up working. Alright, so on use down. We actually yeah, we'll have fire bullet run. And yeah, we'll let that run, and then we'll do is firing equals true. Update on use up. We'll do is firing equals false. Yeah, I'm just checking the ring between the collider. The enemies that don't really go in place. Yeah. It's just symbol melee enemy. Sure. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Update. Okay, so if is firing return. If that's false, there we go. GIS field, private float, last fire time. So if last fire time, float current time equals time since level load. If current time minus last fire time is less than auto fire rate, return. We don't want to continue. After that, we want to fire and then set the time. So last fire time equals current time, and we will do fire bullet. Oh, that's private, so expand that out to be protected. All right, so this should automatically fire a bullet every 1/5 of a second. So let's try to set this up here. We're just going to be watching the debug log to see what happens for it. So this weapon, we give it a box collider, give it the gun auto. This will detect yes, orientation gun. Similarly, we will give it a gun grip, which is going to be there, but -90, -90. And then a transform fire point, which comes up here. Reset the rotation from that. Fire point. Oh yes, this should work. And then proceed this. Yeah. Gun grip, pop that in there. Fire points, pop that in there. Is firing auto right? Yep. So this needs default, environment, and armory player. So we'll watch some values here, but we're also going to be watching this console on the bottom left. Okay. Yeah, so that fires pretty quickly. Yeah, this is correctly firing, and then stops when I let go. Technically, if you somehow manage to click your mouse or your trigger more than 5 times a second, you can fire faster than holding it down. But that would be stupid. Max ammo, set this to 20. So you just hold down, continue fire. I know this looks awesome. There's so much happening on screen. Yeah, it's mostly this log down here. All right. So with that, we basically have all that set up. Since there's a lot of things that end up happening for this, I think we should probably set up a little bit of automation for this. Yeah, we can do that. Editor. I'll be pushing my luck, but I think I can get this done in the last 15 minutes here. Gun builder window. Alright. Pop, pop, pop. We are going to call this from editor window. A public static void show window. Call this from menu item tools / gun builder. We'll do gun builder window equals get window of type gun builder window window dot show. All right. Do the create GUI. If player 1 presses a button, how can I make it run code on player 2's instance? There's a few different ways. The easiest and fastest way is to have a function that is public that you call with an event. So the way that my gun is declaring stuff off for everyone else. Yeah, so I'm using send custom network event. Then you can tell what type of people will receive it, whether it be the owner, if it's everyone, if it's just remote players. You can do that. That's probably the easiest way to start with. Do note, if you are doing that, you are going to need to give that function the network callable attribute. You don't need to put in a value to it because you're probably not going to be hitting it more than 5 times a second, presumably. So if you just give it the network callable attribute and have that function be public, it'll work perfectly fine. All right, create GUI. This is going to need a few things. So we'll have a public scriptable. Oh yeah, it's fine. I will do a private float. Okay, we'll just do this the really basic way since I have 10 minutes and I want to do this quickly. On GUI, we'll do have a private game object, selected object. Selected equals editor GUI layout object field, selected type of game object. True, we want an object available from the scene. And what does this complain about? Can you specifically do game objects here? No, okay, it doesn't do that. So we need to cast this as a game object. Alright, then if GUI layout button create gun. So in here, we'll do if selected is null, return. Now, we need to get all the things that go onto a gun. So, we'll also have a bool for a being synced. Have a bool synced. And synced will equal header GUI layout dot toggle synced and value pass in of synced. Armory gun script equals not assigning it. If synced, else okay, actually we want to do a get component first. We want to get component armory gun. And if we do get something, that means we've already run it, so we want to just quit. So if script is real, return. Quit out of it. Alright. We'll do undo.record complete object undo selected. Built gone. This is if it's synced, script will equal selected.add component array gun. Oh wait, synced isn't right. We want it to be auto. That's it. If auto, armory gun auto. And if not, script will equal armory gun. Then we'll do rigid body RB equals selected dot add component rigid body RB dot is kinematic equals true. Next we want a box collider, so box collider box equals selected dot add component box collider. After that, we need to put the pickup on it. VRC pickup. Pickup equals selected add component. VRC pickup. And we want to set pickup dot auto hold equals true. Pickup dot orientation equals gun. Auto hold takes a set. And we need it's two instantiated transforms, one for the grip and one for the fire point. So we'll do a transform gun grip equals new game object gun grip transform gun grip dot parent equals selected dot transform, and then we want pickup dot exact gun to equal gun grip. Next, we want to do basically the same thing, but instead of gun grip, we are going to be making it the fire point. Fire point. Call this fire point. And we'll have script dot okay, so what would that fire point just have us do fire point equals 1. Script dot set fire point. That should be everything by default. So lastly, we'll do prefab utility. Board prefab instance property modifications and selected. Is there a way to instantiate a new empty prefab utility? Instantiate game object dot create primitive. Undo dot create register created object undo. Okay, and then this we just do. All right. Gun grip dot game object. Created gun grip. And this one will do fire point. Created fire point. All right. All of this should work. So if I go over here, we now have our tools menu up here. I can click this, open gun builder, tab it down here. If I drag marksman over into that and press create gun, it adds a rigid body, adds the pickup. It doesn't set the auto detect. It doesn't set the fire point on the script because it errored here. It errored during the add component for rigid body. Okay, so that means that okay, they're adding this component automatically added the rigid body because it automatically added the pickup. So we need a check for that. Or I guess we can just have both of these be I'm speeding along because I have a thing to get to right after this. But I think I can get this done here, and I think it'll work fine. Alright, create gun. Alright, fire point. Okay, the layers still should be set. Script.layers. Load set layers. Layer mask. Layers. Layers equals. New layers equals new layers. All right. Set layers. New layer mask. Layer. Layer mask. Actually, I don't know how to append these. All right. Well, this is something that I can easily figure out in the future. For now, thanks for everyone showing up. We actually did a lot today, even if it was largely in Photoshop and thinking. But we did get the guns working. We can now shoot other players. We can remove their health. They cannot heal, and they don't die. So it's just an eternal life of suffering, I guess. But we have things that we can work off of, and I have mostly created the automation for turning an object into a weapon. So with that, thanks for everyone stopping by today. We'll be picking this up again next week on Tuesday, same time as this, as always. And we'll be doing this throughout next week as well, and then the week after that, we'll be jumping back into the NPC system. From there, I want to go week by week where we swap between working on the combat stuff and the NPC things, and if any other big but if any other big projects come across, then we can dive into those as well. It was great having everyone, and we'll see you next time.